Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Armored Series Space Platform. So, this is the United Earth Government ARMD Series Space Carrier Platform, which we briefly got to see in the opening episode, Booby Trap, when everything kind of kicks off and we kind of go from there. So, let me get down to the description for those that are not as familiar with this, because we don't get to see this a lot. Really, we get it in the pilot episode, and then I think it's what Armed One and Armed Two. They're both destroyed right away. So, okay. Description: Robotech, the Armed, seen in the TV series in the first episode or two, as Armor 1 and Armor 2 space platform or carrier spaceships were originally designed to be a sort of flying dock or space ring for space fighter planes and Veritech fighters. However, the design was modified, adding an array of weapon systems to the platform and converting it into an aircraft carrier in space. The armed platform quickly became a major component in the Earth Defense Force's strategic system. Utilizing the secrets of robotechnology unearthed from the SDF 1, the armed space platforms were built and placed into orbit around Earth. However, despite the overall achievements of this structure, the armed fleet of five would prove ineffective against the Zentradi fleet. Only two would survive the ultimate conflict, left to circle the Earth as ever watchful guardians of the Robotech Defense Force. So I do only remember the two of them, but apparently there was five. So okay, well that goes from there. All right, the greatest disadvantage of the armed is how low speed and lack of overall mobility. Another is that they are not capable of deep space travel, limited to Earth orbit and or short trips to orbit the moon. In Macross, the armed class vessels were designed as space carriers for variable fighters and other UNS spacecraft. The armed began construction in April 2003 at the uh, Langrang Point 5 manufacturing station. The first two carriers, Armed 1 and Armed 2, were commissioned in July of 2008 and October of 2008, respectively. And while operational prior to the space war, to Space War 1 in February 2009, built by OTEC Company, the armed carriers featured over technology with gravity control systems and reaction heat pile system, and even the full drive, though the superdimensional navigation system was never implemented. At 430 meters in length, the armed carriers were much smaller than the large SDF-1 Macross, and both armed 1 and 2 were originally meant to dock with the larger craft when the ship achieved orbit during its maiden voyage. As a carrier vessel, the arms held numerous ships and mecha. The Armed 1 held 78 SF A3 Lancer 2 space fighter and 270 QF 3000E Ghost fighters, as well as an unknown number of VF 1A variable fighters. Just prior to Space War 1, in addition to several hundred fighters, the armed carrier was armed with many weapons, including beam cannons, small anti aircraft cannons, and launchers, as well as large anti ship reaction warheads. The armed possessed many large vernier thrusters, nozzles positioned all over the craft. These powerful thrusters granted the armed excellent maneuverability in space and also proved very useful for combat engagements and evasion. Both Armed 1 and 2 were designed in the first or destroyed in the first Battle of Space War 1 on February 7th, 2009. However, both vessels engaged in combat with the Zentradi fleet and proved quite successful in destroying several large Zentradi capital warships with their anti ship reaction warheads. Eventually, six more vessels of the armed class were commissioned, and both the original ships were replaced. To this day, Armed 1 and 2 remain docked with the SDF 1 Macross on Earth. Macross, do you remember Love? Or just Macross the movie? The SDF Macross, SDF 1, and Robotech attached two of the armed class vessels as its arms instead of the Prometheus and Daedalus submersible carriers. This would presumably give it much better enhancement to its weapons loadout and pack more punch against enemy targets, especially in space where nuclear weapons were more likely to be used. In Star Wars, the Star Wars setting Macross is the name of the entire system, with similar events occurring there as a Robotech and Macross. During the Clone Wars, a massive alien vessel ripped out of what was thought to be hyperspace during a battle between the CIS and the Republic forces. The ship cast a shockwave and shredded the CIS forces entirely, yet left the Republic's side lightly damaged. The battle was taking place in the Macross system as narratives of that era were siding, or natives of that era were siding with the separatists in hope of gaining their independence from an uncaring republic. However, both sides simply wanted Macross for its resources to use in the war. So that's a Star Wars plug in for doing this, seeing that we are kind of hijacking the Star Wars system for running whatever system we're doing, whether it's our Star Trek, our Star Wars, our G.I. Joe, in this case, doing Robotech. The system itself is very robust to be able to be kind of remolded in different ways, so it works out pretty well. Um, all right, the alien ship came to rest on or at Altair Island in one of the oceans on Macross Prime, the main planet in the system, with the key population and habitable ecosystems. The rest of the worlds were more or less uninhabitable and used for said resources and raw materials, which were in overabundance. The CIS forces defeated the Republic's military quickly, moved in, and claimed the system for themselves. The drawback was that the entire population were treated as co conspirators against the Republic, and much of their rights were stripped away overnight. The rest of the galaxy didn't even take notice. I think I'm going to stop going from here because this is just taking it into really bringing this into the Star Wars universe. Now, this is on rpggamer.org. So if this interests you, by all means, please visit this site. It is a wonderful resource. I've been using it for years. If this ever goes away, I really will shed quite a few tears. It is that wonderful of a resource in my mind. And hopefully, if you do visit this, you'll see it in that same light for yourself. Um, so let's kind of get on to the ship itself. Let's see. So this is, of course, going to be a capital class starship. It has a length of 1,410 meters, or 10 feet, 400 and 430 meters, has a width of 323 meters and a height of 64 meters. The flight deck has a width of 115 meters. Um, it weighs in at roughly 474,000 tons. I'm going to say metric tons. Um, let's see, we have Capital Starship Piloting, has a crew of 3,660. Of that, we have 160 officers, 2,900 enlisted men, including gunners, 600 assigned to air attack units like jet fighters, Veritech fighters, and so forth. Let's see, we have enough room on board for 1,200 passengers, usually special assignment personnel. There is the crew skills, which I'm not going to really get into, but cargo capacity, we have 35,000 metric tons. We have enough consumables and rations for 1 year. Can be rationed to twice that if needed, but we'll just say 1 year. Why not? This is not going to be available for sale. Now, I will say I do like the idea if you were bringing it into Star Wars that this is a system and they're starting their own stuff, possibly bringing it into the greater galactic universe. Um, because in a lot of regards, we kind of are in Robotech as it is. Instead of just being on Earth, now we understand that there's Zentradi coming in and going from there. Um, where very easily you could take the Zentradi and swap it out for something or other if you wanted to. But the Zentradi do work very well. Okay, there is no hyperdrive on here. We do have a nav computer, but it's only meant for inter-system flight. Has a maneuverability of +2. Space speed is 2. There is no uh, atmospheric flight speed because it is not meant to be in the atmosphere. Has a hull of 5D, which is very respectable, but unfortunately, it lacks shields. Now, there again, here is something that if it is brought into the greater Star Wars galactic civilization, maybe it's an upgrade into that. If we were to bring this into a Star Trek, maybe you would bring shields into it as well, or you just leave it as it is. Okay, sensors. Passively, we can scan out to 3 kilometers with a +1. +1D. We can do an active scan out to 5 kilometers with a 2D bonus. We do have an active search out to 10 kilometers at a 2D +2 bonus, and a focus out to 400 meters with a 3D bonus. Now, standard armament, main engine, reflex engines, secondary engines, numerous thruster ports, and stabilization and mobility. Now, our aircraft, we have 270 QF 3000E Ghost Fighters. These are unmanned. We have 200 Spec 2 Lancer 2 Space Cannons. These are unmanned. We have 96 SF 3A Lancer 1 fighters. These are manned. And 24 Veritech fighters, optional, not standard. I would say that if I could, I would make them a standard complement, but that's me. All right, so we have 5 main laser cannons. We have 2 in the top, 4 deck, 2 under, 4 deck, and 1 in the rear. They are turreted. Fire control is a 1D. Damage is 7D. Now, this is using energy, so we don't have to worry about how much um, ammo we have. Fire rate, 1 every 2 rounds, like a turbo laser. We have 2 main anti-warship missile launchers. Looking at the missiles, now I did pull that page up. Your missiles are pretty much going to do a 8D damage. Now, if you look at them, and I'm just going to do a very short kind of overall listing of it, they have a short, medium, long, like a low yield, high yield, stuff like that. So there's different ranges available, which is where it all kind of comes into effect, as well as I believe they hit a area, so you can have a short range, high yield. So it's going to hit a wider area than a short range, low yield, kind of like that. But they all do roughly 8D damage. Now, for me, for simplicity, I would probably just take one of them, whatever, just call it 8D damage, and just run from it from there. But I like to keep things on the easy side. For those that really want to get into this as its own role playing game, or just a fan and you really want to go through, the author had spent a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, making sure everything is as close as what they can get it to correct. which is very respectable. And I do give all the respect to the author for this because this is not me. This is something that I've seen here for a long time. And I figured, hey, we'll just take a break from the other ones. We'll just do Macross slash Robotech for, say, a week or so. Just kind of changing things up just a little bit, and we'll go from there. Okay. Now, the weapons here, missile launchers. Let's see, fire control is 1D. These are their own. Does 15D damage. That is huge. Blast radius is 762 meters. That's quite a bit in area. Now there's 80 or 40 rounds in each, 80 total. You can fire one or two attack per round. These are considered long-range missiles, LRMs. If the missile chart were posted on this page, these missiles are the size of ICBMs, both representing the limited technology from the Robotech series, but further as the Robotechnology, over technology and protoculture, and also good for explaining the extreme damage of these, or that these do. We also have 6 medium anti-warship missile launchers. They have a fire control of 2D. We have about 40 in each, and they do, uh, with a total of 240 missiles total. They can be fired off in volleys of 1 or 2 missiles per round, which means that you can have 12 to 24 altogether. Okay. Now we have 24 anti aircraft laser cannons. These are, of course, on turrets. Again, the fire control is 2D. This is at starfighter scale. Damage is 3D for a short burst, 4D for a long burst, and 6D for a full round burst. So keep in mind a short burst, you might be able to, let's just say if you did a short burst, you could do, I'm throwing numbers out here. If you want to say 3 or 4 short bursts in one round, a long burst maybe twice in a round, and a full burst just mean one burst. So, however you might want to look at that, it's all up to how you and your group want to do that. Uh, Either way, I would say would be fine. But there again, like I said, it all depends on your group and how you want to play it. Just trying to keep this a little bit shorter here today. Um, like I said, the author of this has a lot longer write up, really bringing this into the Star Wars universe if that's something you want to do, which I think would be wonderful. Uh, but there again, in my mind, I would love to bring like Macross, Star Wars, Star Trek, uh, BattleTech itself into uh, the same universe. I think it could be something a lot very fun to play in, kind of mash everything up, and we could always introduce another race or two, or bring something else in to give us some of this stuff. So with that, thank you so very much for stopping by. It's wonderful having you here. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next video.